Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Govt and these are the headlines. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 30 million with over 946,000 fatalities. World's second worst hit country, India's caseload has exceeded 5.2 million after a spike of over 96,000 infections in the last 24 hours. 1,174 people have died overnight in India, raising the toll to over 84,000. In Pakistan, 9 people have lost their lives in the last 24 hours, taking the toll to 6,408 with over 304,000 confirmed cases. China has begun military drills near the Taiwan Strait as a U.S. envoy, Keith Krach, landed in Taipei for a high-level visit. In a press briefing, China's Defense Ministry spokesperson said the action is necessary due to the current situation in the region. Russia says securing a long-lasting peace in the Middle East will be impossible without solving the Palestinian problem. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry stressed the importance of resuming talks between Israel and Palestine without preconditions. It said Israel's normalization deals are not enough and Palestinian issue must be resolved in accordance with the fundamental principle of two states. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko says he has been forced to close the country's western border with Poland and Lithuania. During an address, Lukashenko said the military will be on high alert and the border with Ukraine will be strengthened. Both Poland and Lithuania say the borders are operating as usual with no signs of closure. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The global number of COVID-19 cases has crossed 30 million with nearly 945,000 fatalities. World's second worst hit country, India's caseload has exceeded 5.2 million after a spike of over 96,000 infections in the last 24 hours. 1,174 people have died overnight in India, raising the toll to over 84,000. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic has the world in a chaos as governments struggle to contain the viral disease. The World Health Organization says 1 in 7 cases reported to the body is a health worker, and in some countries that figure rises to 1 in 3. Canada's largest province, Ontario, will fine people who hold social gatherings in defiance of new limits amid a spike in cases in the cities of Toronto and Ottawa. While U.S. manufacturers are sharply increasing production of cheap, fast, but less accurate COVID-19 tests.
We're making progress, and I think it's the right approach. Let's have a rapid test so we can do more testing and do it more quickly. But let's make sure that we manage those false positives and false negatives and get people the most accurate information as quickly as possible. So we're going to need a little more data on that.
Leaders of Europe's coronavirus-stricken travel and tourism industries have appealed to the European Union's chief executive to press governments to end quarantine requirements and instead embrace coordinated restrictions in testing. Greece reported 135 cases of coronavirus among migrants and refugees made homeless by a fire at large refugee camp on the island of Lesbos. Spain's growing number of cases across the country is worrying authorities as Madrid accounts for around 1/3 of active coronavirus infections in the country.
Reconocemos que
We all know what needs to be done. We recognize the difficult and probably the most complex thing is to choose the moment when decisions are made. But as I said before, in the specific case of Madrid, we understand that measures must be taken and we will be supporting it as a ministry, as we are doing, providing all the technical support and resources that are needed.
New Zealand reported no new cases for the first time in more than 5 weeks as hopes rise that an outbreak discovered in Auckland last month has been stamped out. Australia's coronavirus hotspot of Victoria reported its biggest daily rise in infections in more than a week as the state began relaxing lockdown restrictions. Meanwhile, mainland China reported 32 new COVID-19 cases, all imported, marking the highest daily increase in more than a month.
In Pakistan, 9 people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the country's death toll has reached 6,408. The ministry said the number of overnight cases increased to 752 in the country. It said there are 6,295 active infections, while the total confirmed cases have crossed 304,000 mark. The ministry said over 291,000 people have recovered so far. Pakistan's Foreign Office has rejected India's baseless criticism over Pakistan's new political map. This comes 2 days after a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization rejected India's objections to Pakistan's new map. In a statement, the Foreign Office said India cannot divert the world's attention from human rights violations in Kashmir by leveling allegations against others. Occupied Kashmir is reeling under a curfew and communications blackout after India revoked its special status last year. Since then, Indian occupation forces have killed more than 300 Kashmiris, including 6 in the last 24 hours. Pakistan has strongly condemned the extrajudicial killings of the Kashmiris at the hands of the Indian troops. It has also asked the international community to hold India accountable over its crimes in Kashmir. China has begun military drills near the Taiwan Strait as a U.S. envoy, Keith Krach, landed in Taipei for a high-level visit. In a press briefing, China's defense ministry spokesperson said the action is necessary due to the current situation in the region. China's defense ministry spokesperson said the excursions will protect Beijing's national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The spokesperson said the recent collusion between Washington and Taipei was creating disturbances in the region. Beijing said attempts to use Taiwan to control China were doomed to fail. Krach is due to meet Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen today and will also attend a memorial service for late President Lee Teng-hui tomorrow. Russia says securing a long-lasting peace in the Middle East will be impossible without solving the Palestinian problem. In a statement, Russia's foreign ministry stressed the importance of resuming talks between Israel and Palestine without preconditions. It said Israel's normalization deals with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates are not enough. The statement read Palestinian issue must be resolved in accordance with the fundamental principle of 2 states. The ministry called on the regional and international players to ramp up coordinated efforts to settle the Palestinian problem. It said Russia is ready for joint work within the UN Security Council framework of the Quartet for negotiations on a Middle Eastern settlement. Jordan's Prime Minister Omar Razaz has reiterated his country's firm stance on the Palestinian cause. In a statement, he warned Israel that lasting peace is impossible as long as it continues to act unilaterally. Razaz said a comprehensive peace will not be achieved unless the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people are met. He said Israel's unilateral measures undermine the rights of the Palestinian people to establish their independent state, with Jerusalem as its capital. The Prime Minister said Amman is ready to have a unified stance with Arab countries with regard to regional and external challenges. Palestinians have slammed the recent normalization deals Bahrain and the UAE signed with Israel as a betrayal of their cause. The Saudi-led military coalition says it destroyed a drone launched by the Houthis towards the kingdom. Earlier, a Houthi spokesman said a drone had made a strike on a military target at Aba airport in southern Saudi Arabia. Saudi state media quoted the coalition as saying the drone was launched at civilian targets in the southern region of Khamis Mushait. The airport near the border has been a regular target for Houthi drones and missiles in the last 2 years. This comes as the UN is mediating a process to get Yemen's government and the Houthis to reach an agreement to end the war. Delegations from the warring parties are due to meet in Switzerland this week for talks on a UN-backed prisoner exchange deal. The US says it hopes to move forward with naming Qatar as a major non-NATO ally. In a news conference, senior US official Timothy Landring said the ally status provides for nations with benefits in defense, trade and security. Landring said becoming a major non-NATO ally gives a country preferential access to US military equipment and technology. He said prioritized cooperation on training are some other benefits of becoming a non-NATO ally. Currently, 17 countries have this status, including the Gulf Arab states, Kuwait and Bahrain. Qatar already hosts the largest US military facility in the Middle East. The US has imposed sanctions on 47 individuals and entities linked to Iran's intelligence and security ministry. In a tweet, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the US will continue to protect its homeland and allies from Iranian hackers. Earlier, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said Tehran uses its intelligence ministry as the tool to target civilians. He said the US remains determined to counter offensive cyber campaigns designed to jeopardize its security. This comes a day after Pompeo said Washington will return to the UN to reimpose sanctions on Tehran next week. Turkey says conditions are conducive to restart talks with Greece after its seismic survey vessel left contested waters in the eastern Mediterranean. Ankara and Athens remain locked in a bitter dispute over conflicting claims on the extent of their continental shelves. Speaking at an online panel, Turkey's presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalin said Oruç Reis's return to Antalya was an opportunity to advance talks. Kalin added that Ankara hopes this will be reflected positively at an upcoming European Union summit. He said Ankara wants better relations with Greece as well as the EU. On Sunday, the Turkish vessel returned to the southern province of Antalya for what Ankara called routine maintenance. Greece called the move a positive first step in easing tensions. Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko says he has been forced to close the country's western border with Poland and Lithuania. During an address, Lukashenko said the military will be on high alert and the border with Ukraine will be strengthened. Lukashenko reiterated the August election was legal. The president urged neighboring countries to stop what he called crazy politics, as he doesn't want his country to be at war.
We are forced to withdraw the troops from the streets, put half of the army on standby, and close the state border from the west, primarily with Lithuania and Poland. We are forced to strengthen the state border, unfortunately, with our fraternal Ukraine.
Both Poland and Lithuania say the borders are operating as usual with no sign of closures. Earlier, the EU proposed a supervised rerun of the controversial vote, while bloc's lawmakers called for imposing sanctions on Lukashenko. Now, moving on, Ukraine and the US have started joint military exercises near the western city of Yovarev. The drills began 2 days after Russia started joint military drills with forces in neighboring Belarus. In a statement, the US Embassy in Kiev said the rapid Trident exercises involve nearly 4,000 servicemen from 10 countries. It said the exercises show the strength of the US-Ukraine strategic partnership. At the opening ceremony, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said a modern and equipped army is a priority for him. Kiev's relations with Moscow deteriorated in 2014 after Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine. Kremlin critics team says a proper investigation into the Alexei Navalny's poisoning will show Russia's involvement in the case. Laboratories in Germany, France and Sweden have established that Navalny was poisoned by Novichok nerve agent, a poison developed by Russian military. Navalny's team member George Alburov said the new establishment suggests Navalny was poisoned at his hotel room in Tomsk. He said a true investigation will reveal that the Kremlin, President Vladimir Putin and the security forces are all behind Navalny's poisoning.
We continue to demand a serious and genuine investigation, and we know where the results will lead. These results will show that the Kremlin, Putin and the FSB that organized it all are behind Alexei's poisoning. That's why we don't see any investigation, because they can't investigate themselves.
The Kremlin has denied all allegations, saying neither Putin nor the security forces were involved. Now, moving on, UK opposition leader Keir Starmer said the government has been caught off guard by its creaking COVID-19 testing system. Britain's government acknowledged problems in the system as soaring demand met with worsening turnaround times and availability. Data showed only 14% of the test results in England came back in 24 hours last week, a sharp fall from 32% the week before. Pollster YouGov said the UK government's approval rating fell to its lowest over handling of the pandemic, with 63% viewing it badly. Starmer also said there had been a lack of planning regarding reopening of the economy.
We want schools open, we want children back in school, we want to reopen the economy. They're good things. But the problems we're now seeing with infections are a necessary consequence of that. And so they're not unexpected. Why has the government been caught off guard by something that should have been planned for?
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Catalonia leader Quim Torra says he is not afraid of Spain's Supreme Court magistrates and will keep working to achieve a Catalan republic. In a televised speech, Torra said he will not stop carrying out his duties as a regional leader. The Catalan leader said he is completely dedicated to battling the coronavirus pandemic. Torra said he will not deviate from his duty of serving the citizens. Earlier, an appeal had been filed in the court over a disobedience sentence that would bar him from holding public office. The Spanish government has already ruled out any amnesty for the jailed Catalan leaders or a referendum on independence. Peru's top court has rejected the government's attempt to block impeachment proceedings against President Martin Vizcarra. The Constitutional Court ruled by 5 votes to 2 to reject a petition to suspend congressional debate on the impeachment. The Constitutional Court also voted by 6 to 1 to admit a lawsuit to determine if Congress exceeded its powers by impeaching Vizcarra. The president is charged with moral incapacity over leaked audio tapes and alleged ties to a little-known singer involved in a fraud case. Vizcarra has no party representation in the multi-faction legislature that requires 87 votes to remove the president from office.
It is important that the Constitutional Court made this decision. It's really a difficult moment for our country. I think our democratic system and the independence of powers is strengthened. And now we have to wait for President Vizcarra to go to Congress, even though he has the power to send a lawyer. The best thing for our democracy would be for him to show up, remaining calm, with humility to face the serious allegations the country needs answer to.
The president has rejected the claims as without any foundation. Now moving on, Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has praised his government's preservation of environment as fires continue to rage in the Amazon rainforest. Amazon deforestation has surged 34.5% in the 12 months through July compared to the same period a year ago. Speaking at a public event, Bolsonaro said Brazil is the country that preserves the environment the most. In the Amazon, illegal ranchers and land speculators generally set fire to plots of land to clear them for agricultural purposes. Environmental advocates blame Bolsonaro, who supports more commercial farming and mining in the Amazon, for emboldening those who destroy the forest. The president says developing the Amazon will lift the region out of poverty. And the U.S. storm Sally has caused heavy rain and flooding in Carolinas and Georgia as it continues north from the Gulf Coast. The storm has already battered Florida and Alabama with rain, turning roads into rivers and leaving homes submerged. Pensacola in Florida experienced up to 5 feet of flooding, which resulted in damaged roads and bridges. Officials say one person was killed, while another remains missing in southwest Alabama. They say over 500,000 homes and businesses are without power. The National Hurricane Center says Sally has now weakened to a post-tropical cyclone, but tornadoes are still possible. In Argentina, measures to halt the spread of the coronavirus pandemic have escalated unemployment and price hike. The hiatus has dragged down many people into poverty. They are forced to live in makeshift camps. Look more into the plight of these people in this report.
Argentina's economy is in recession for the third year in a row. The country is headed for a steep 12% contraction this year due to the impact of the pandemic. The economic stagnation has pushed up poverty levels, unemployment, pushing more people out of their homes. According to official data, 3.6 million families in the country have been impacted by homelessness.
I was no longer able to pay rent. I work informally. I'm a painter, and because of the pandemic, I was left without work. I couldn't pay my rent anymore, and I was left out on the street. I even sold my things to pay rent. I sold my furniture, the TV, and things.
The makeshift shacks are made of sheet metal, plastic, wood, and cardboard. Thousands of families have settled in the field as they have no place to go elsewhere.
We need a permanent home for my family, for my baby. One day I have work, the other day I don't. I don't have a way to pay rent. I don't even have enough for me to eat.
The residents of Shantytown are in a miserable plight. According to statistics, almost 400,000 people lost their work during the pandemic. In Guernica, officials are seeking to evict families from this patch of land by the end of September.
The British auction house Christie's is planning to sell the skeleton of one of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rexes in early October. Details in this report.
Stan the T-Rex, named after the paleontologist who first discovered its bones, walked the earth some 67 million years ago. Now, the skeleton will be displayed at Christie's in New York prior to auction on October 6th with an estimated price of $6 million to $8 million. The current world record price for any dinosaur is Sue, which was sold in 1997 to the Field Museum in Chicago for $8.4 million.
He is certainly one of the most complete, and certainly the most complete since Sue to come to auction. We have 188 of the original bones. Nobody knows how many bones a T-Rex had in life. No complete specimen will ever be found. It's estimated that they probably had about 300.
Christie's has displayed the dinosaur that will remain there till mid-October at its Manhattan, New York house. Stan is 40 feet long with its tail outstretched and 13 feet high.
They are bigger than the other theropod dinosaurs that are related to them. So the size and the ferocity really does stand out. His skull is bigger than, say, an Allosaurus or another meat-eating dinosaur. The clue is in the name, the Tyrannosaurus rex. He is the tyrant lizard king.
Stan will be visible to the public through Christie's windows from the sidewalk, while the auction house also plans to book socially distanced viewings.
Stocks in Asia trading mostly higher as Chinese yuan holdings record gains against the dollar. JP Morgan says yuan holdings are gaining strength against the dollar, not observed in recent months, and will continue to gain ground. Mainland Chinese stocks are leading the gains as Shanghai Composite gains over 0.5%. The Shenzhen component has advanced by close to 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gains by over 0.25%. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 gained fractionally higher. South Korea's Kospi also gained marginally. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.